With a brand new Fantastic Four movie finally hitting theaters, it's the perfect time to talk about the other version of Marvel's first family that most people either forgot about or never knew existed at all. Fantastic Four, the animated series, aired in the mid-90s in the same era as Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, and X-Men, but while those shows still get love to this day, Fantastic Four rarely enters the conversation. And yeah, when you watch season 1, you kind of get why. The early episodes are a little rough, the tone is goofy, the animation's inconsistent, and the writing leans heavily into cheesy, almost sitcom level storytelling. Even the theme song, composed by actual legend Giorgio Moroder, feels like a disco fever dream. But here's the twist, it's actually kind of catchy. Like, infuriatingly catchy. You'll find yourself singing it against your will like 3 hours later. That's besides the point though. Something happens in season 2. The show matures. The art style changes. The tone gets more grounded, and suddenly, Fantastic Four becomes one of the most comic, accurate, and surprisingly ambitious Marvel cartoons of its era. And the truth is, regardless of the season, we're talking big guest stars. Silver Surfer, Namor the Submariner, Black Panther, Thor, Daredevil, Hulk, Ghost Rider, the Inhumans, and the villains. They're truly some of the most important villains in all of Marvel, like Galactus, Doctor Doom, Super Skrull, and the entire Skrull Empire, plus underrated deep cuts like Puppet Master, Mole Man, Annihilus, Psycho Man, and Galactus' new herald at the end, Terrax. These weren't throwaway cameos either. They were part of a real story arc for the most part, and they were pulled straight from classic comic stories. By the time it finds its footing, Fantastic Four, the animated series, becomes a genuinely solid representation of the team, full of heart, science fiction weirdness, and classic Marvel drama. It's not just better than you remember, it's probably better than you knew even existed. It went from borderline unwatchable to genuinely underrated. So before Marvel's first family takes their first steps into theaters this weekend, for the third time, let's take a deep dive into the forgotten series that might just be the best Fantastic Four adaptation that no one talks about. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the lab. This is Toonology, the study of cartoons. I'm your resident toonologist. I'm Will Bryant, and I'll be guiding you along as we do our thing here, where we take a deep dive into a different animated series every single podcast episode. And on this day today, I'm coming at you with Fantastic Four, the animated series, in honor of the MCU's first attempt, but Hollywood's third attempt. Technically 4 if you count the movie that was made and scrapped back in 1994. Anyway, Fantastic Four First Steps is hitting theaters this weekend, and I figured it was no better time than right now to talk about the animated series that aired way back when in the 90s. And it's funny because if this is your first episode here at Toonology, then first of all, thank you, appreciate you, much love, and keep coming back for more. Besides that, if you haven't done so already, please follow me on all platforms. It's Toonology HQ, because this is your headquarters for all things animation. Toonology HQ. It's the same thing on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube. You can find some short clips on all those platforms and all these podcasts in long form, not only on YouTube, so you could watch me, but you could listen to me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever you can get your podcasts. Anyways, if this is your first episode, as I said, thank you very much. But if this isn't your first episode, then you know what we've covered already in the past. See, we started it off with perhaps the greatest animated series of all time, Batman, the animated series. We followed that up with, hey, if you argued that Spider-Man, the animated series, was actually the greatest series of all time, I wouldn't argue against that either. Then, in honor of Superman, the movie hitting theaters, we had to tackle Superman, the animated series. And now that we got James Gunn's movie out of the way, Kevin Feige is going to bless us with Fantastic Four. But here's the thing. Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, those are all regarded as some of the greatest examples of animation of all time. There's a reason why I'm here in my 30s talking to you. I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of you are in your 30s, maybe your 40s. Hey, some of y'all are in your 20s. It's all good. I hope there's a kid somewhere out there learning about this for the first time. I really do. A young child. That's why I try to keep it clean on here on Toonology. Either way, there's a reason why those 3 TV shows are spoken of and considered so high. They're regarded in such high regards. They are held in such high regards. I'm really just doing a great job here right now. Just bear with me, guys. Anyways, I would argue that unfortunately, we're finally at the point here at Toonology where we're covering a cartoon that maybe doesn't compare favorably next to iconic shows like Batman, like Spider-Man, like Superman. I'll even throw X-Men up there. I just haven't covered it yet on this show. Bet your bottom dollar I will, and probably pretty soon. It's just, there's no X-Men movie in theaters right now. There's a fantastic, honestly, if I was going to start this any other way, it would have been Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, X-Men. Or maybe X-Men and Spider-Man reversed, either way. But I started it this way because we've got these blockbuster movies coming out, and I'm not complaining about it. I'm so happy. I was in theaters Friday, the day that Superman was out. And you best believe I'll be there for Fantastic Four on that Friday as well. Fantastic Four just isn't on the same level as Batman, as Spider-Man, as Superman, as X-Men. It's just the way it is. Does it make it a bad cartoon? Absolutely not. In fact, I realized in my rewatch, actually, I didn't watch this show as a cartoon. I didn't even know it existed when I was a child. I knew all about Batman. I knew Superman was out. I knew X-Men. I knew Spider-Man. But it turns out Fantastic Four was a part of something called the Marvel Action Hour, where Marvel syndicated an hour of animated TV. It was Fantastic Four and it was Iron Man. And as a kid, I didn't even know those two existed. So I had to go back as an adult. Had to. It was an obligation for me to go back as an adult and watch these cartoons, watch these animated series. And I'm glad I did. Listen, going from Batman to Superman to Spider-Man to Fantastic Four, especially season 1 of Fantastic Four, it's definitely rough. It's a little rough. But I've got to tell you, it really finds its footing in season 2. And man, I think it kind of nails the landing. And it's an unfortunate situation that there was no season 3. And look, we're going to get into all this. So why waste more time? Let's get right into it. I want to talk about, you see, normally I go into like the talent behind the animation, like the creators and the writers. But I think for this episode, what I want to do is kind of walk through the struggles of season 1 and eventually how they finally kind of broke through and started really doing well in season 2. As I just mentioned, it aired as part of Marvel's Action Hour alongside Iron Man. Here in New York, where I'm born and raised and coming at you from, it was a part of WPIX mornings, apparently, I learned, and possibly even on Sunday mornings and not even Saturday mornings. I was more of a Fox Kids and WB Kids Saturday morning watcher. And then every now and then some Nickelodeon too, Nicktoons, but I didn't know this was even existing back then. It was part of Marvel's early attempt to rival DC's success with Batman the Animated Series. You could tell, however, the art direction, the writing, the tone, it was aimed at a very young audience. Even compared to the other 90s cartoons of its time, this show felt like it didn't trust its audience's intelligence or attention span. And it's unfortunate, because if it was trying to compete with shows like Batman the Animated Series, you would think that it would maybe take a page from that cartoon and treat the viewer with a little bit more respect. But it was, as I'll get into a little bit more, there was more campiness and pandering going on in season one that definitely made the product suffer a little bit. Perhaps a way to kind of encapsulate the change in tone from season one to season two would be by discussing the theme song, the theme song for Fantastic Four, because that was one of the most jarring moments that I've had kind of in all of, well, there's one moment that was the most jarring moment that I've ever had watching a cartoon, and it happened in this series, and I can't wait to talk about that. But before I even got there, there was the opening credits, the opening theme for the cartoon, and it really felt completely different from any other animated series at the time. And I don't know if that is a good thing. See, it was so unique. It was I was shocked when I did a little bit of digging into it because it felt campy. It felt very old school, whereas like Batman was just like this orchestral themes, as was Superman. Spider-Man had Joe Perry's really awesome guitar riffs. We haven't talked about X-Men, but we all know that classic X-Men riff. You know, something nice and simple. This was not that. This was not that at all. When you first hear this song, you think to yourself, what in the blue hell is this? And then perhaps against your every will, you kind of start bobbing to it a little bit, dancing even, maybe. And then once this campy monstrosity of a superhero theme song ends, you might find yourself singing it over and over again, even though you don't want to at all. You'll find yourself just going, Fantastic Four. You know, I probably just got to play a little bit of it. I'm not sure if it'll get me flagged or whatever, but let's try to get a little bit of this flavor for you guys. By the way, the funny thing about it is maybe I should talk about it a little bit more. It's the most every lyric is just exactly what every character is, which makes it kind of even funnier. But man, how about we just play a little bit of it, huh? They got hit by cosmic rays in the most fantastic way. No need to fear, they're here. Da, 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 da. Fantastic Four. Da, 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 da. Reed Richards is fantastic. Sue can fade from sight. Johnny is the Human Torch. The Thing just loves to fight. Yeah! Fantastic Four! Fantastic Four! Oh, man. I wasn't lying to you guys. What the hell was that? But also, wasn't that also kind of incredible? And when I realized who was behind this song, it suddenly made sense why, even though probably doesn't fit this vibe of Marvel's First Family, perhaps not the best representation of a superhero theme song, there's a reason why that song was ingrained in my head, and it's because it was composed by Giorgio Moroder, who is an absolute legend in the music industry. He's often known as the father of disco. He's one of the first major producers to embrace synthesizers in pop music, and he worked with legends like Donna Summer on tracks like I Feel Love, which is a revolutionary electronic hit. He scored iconic films like Scarface, Midnight Express, Flashdance, The Neverending Story, and Top Gun. He won multiple Academy Awards, multiple Grammys, and perhaps his greatest accomplishment ever, if you ask me, and it's my show, so I'll answer it this way. He collaborated with, in my opinion, and probably undeniable fact, the greatest electronic music producers of all time, Daft Punk, in the 2010s. He had a huge influence in Daft Punk's production style, and Daft Punk even made a song named after this guy in their last album, Random Access Memories, one of my favorite albums of all time. So, Giorgio Moroder, this song, might have been a swing and a miss in terms of superhero kind of stuff, but in terms of just music, thank you for giving us this hit. It's baffling that they got someone like this to do the Fantastic Four song. It's like, how did this guy, a disco and film score god, end up with writing a theme song for a Saturday morning cartoon? I mean, was Moroder just bored? Was he having a lot of fun and was like, why not, Marvel, why not? I mean, it's way too dancey and disco-y for the genre, but hey, we were still blessed with it. This is like if Hans Zimmer was asked to do the theme song for Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know, but hey, hopefully Hans Zimmer does do that someday, and thank you to Giorgio Moroder for blessing us with this song. Now, this song only lasted for one season. In season 2, the song fit the tone of Superheroes and Fantastic Four way more. It didn't feel like this weird dance song. Instead, they got William Kevin Anderson to compose a song that was way less campy, but ultimately, and unfortunately, forgettable. It, although it won't be this catchy tune that stays there in your head like Georgia provided for us in season 1, it did at least set a better tone for season 2. No longer were we smacked in the face with this campy disco song before every episode. Instead, we had a genuine, legitimate superhero song that took itself a little bit more seriously and set a more grounded tone for the season that was to come. I want to break down the voice, not just the voice cast, but the characters in general. But because there's such a stark difference in season 1 and season 2, I want to also discuss the changes in each character between season and how I think each one of them improved in some way or other. See, the 90s were kind of a benchmark as far as animated shows went. You had, as I've mentioned multiple times in this episode already, and we're only 20 minutes in, Batman, the animated series, Spider-Man, Superman. These were all incredibly voice acted and voice directed series. Specifically, Batman and Superman were both voice directed and casted by Andrea Romano, who I have covered in detail on this podcast, and I will continue to cover in detail because she has worked on other TV shows like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited and Batman Beyond that I can't wait to talk about. But for now, we've only discussed Batman and Superman and the stellar voice performances in that show. Spider-Man, the animated series, another series that recorded in ensemble form like Batman and like Superman. Ensemble form meaning that they were all present at the same time in a recording studio together to record. That is something that rarely, if ever, happens anymore, especially in a post-COVID world. But regardless, the bar for voice acting in the 90s in animation was set to a brand new high. There was a seriousness and a dedication to voice acting in animation that really wasn't there as prevalent before that. Definitely not in, the 50s and 60s and 70s, where cartoons were always just some campy kid corny stuff. The 80s, some cartoons tried to kind of steer the course in the right direction a little bit. It was really truly the 90s where these cartoons that respected the viewer regardless of age really started to come through, and it was voice acting and voice directing that really helped get there, along with mature writing. And it's the animation that kind of made it easy to digest for the children out there. But when you look back at shows like this as an older adult, you can tell which ones have the writing and the voice acting that respects the viewer, and which ones are just placating to younger audiences. And unfortunately, here in Fantastic Four, we have an example of more placating to the child as opposed to respecting the viewer, and it becomes obvious in the voice acting and the characters. I guess their characters writing by the teams, and I really don't blame the voice actors much in this series at all. I think, if anything, they were just given poor scripts to work with in the first season, and for that reason, I'm not really going to go too deep into writing on this show, because if Superman taught me anything in theaters a week or two ago, it's I should just be nice, and if I don't have anything nice to say, then So, Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, voiced by Bo Weaver. He's a former newscaster and voiceover pro. He's known for voicing, speaking of, Superman in the 1988 animated series. His performance is serviceable but bland, especially in season 1. Reed, though, he's a tough character to nail, because Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, he needs both intellect and humanity. In season 1, writing made him sound robotic. It's not until season 2 where the scripts gave him more real dialogue and less babble. And here's the thing that happens with Mr. Fantastic, not just in this animated show, but even in the comics and the movies. Reed Richards is a genius, but not just a genius. He is literally called the smartest man in all of Marvel. He's the smartest man in the universe. That's his thing. Besides being able to stretch, that was the sound of me stretching for anyone not watching. Besides being able to stretch, he is the smartest man in the universe. Okay? It's like him, and then, I don't know, I think Tony Stark's like a distant second. There's no Lex Luthor, no Mr. Terrific, no Bruce Wayne in this world. So Reed Richards is the guy. Now, here's the problem with writing a character that's supposed to be the smartest person of all time. How do you write that if you yourself are not the smartest person of all time? You'd have to be a Rhodes Scholar, some type of physicist, to properly write Reed Richards. And I don't think that there's a lot of physicists out there that are quitting their physics job and signing up with Marvel to write a comic book. So what happens is you have people that are creative writers, that are intelligent in terms of creativity, but maybe didn't exactly, ace their chemistry exam. And now they have to write for the smartest person in the entire universe. So it's natural that the writing for Reed Richards can often feel a little contrived. A lot of times he's supposed to be this brilliant leader, but instead he kind of comes off as like a talking textbook sometimes. And he rarely even tries to make sense. He's constantly rattling off made up inventions and solutions. Like, I don't know, like if I polarize the negative gamma wave emitter and reverse the photonic feedback matrix, then maybe, and you know what happens so often in the middle of that explanation? The Thing will just cut him off and be like, oh, darn it, Reed, what are you saying with all this science mumbo jumbo stuff? You know I don't understand that junk. You might as well be speaking to me in another language. And it's this like trope that happens so often in the series where the Thing, where Ben just constantly cuts Reed's scientific explanations off mid-sentence because they don't have a better way of explaining whatever Reed's about to do. Rarely does Reed Richards have to explain how a device actually works. They just magically kind of fix things and solve issues, you know, like he once literally in the series pulled out a like remote control and pointed it at some scrolls and just made them like controlled their mind. And he was like, oh, good thing I invented this mind control device where it takes the molecular blah, 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 blah. And then Ben goes, oh, no, not this mumbo jumbo again. And then that's it. They win. The scrolls lose. And that's the kind of shallow writing that happens with Mr. Fantastic at his worst. You know, at his worst, he's just an unexplained source of scientific mumbo jumbo, of scientific rhetoric that really makes no sense and doesn't try to make sense. And so, in fact, they kind of sweep it under the rug and hope you don't really pay much attention to the scientific explanation part and just kind of enjoy it because it's a kid show or it's a comic book or whatever. I think in the best examples of Mr. Fantastic, the science is interesting and at least attempts to make sense. I don't know. It happens in season 2 a little bit more. He's a better leader and there are better examples of him outsmarting his enemies. And it doesn't have to always be in some scientific way. It could just be by outsmarting Dr. Doom by using his anger against him or his vanity against him, which happens in the finale, Doomsday. So there is more thought given into Reed Richards being the intelligent man that he's supposed to be. We go to Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, who's voiced by Lori Allen. Lori Allen's one of the stronger voice talents in the cast. She would later be known as Pearl Plankton in SpongeBob, the boss in Metal Gear Solid 3, which is one of my favorite games of all time. Metal Gear Solid, perhaps my favorite video game series of all time, along with Splinter Cell probably, which means I like a very specific type of game. I like games where your goal is to hide and avoid conflict at all costs. I am a coward and I don't do well in conflict. So if you can hide in a box and avoid bad guys for 13 hours, sign me up. Anyways, she played the boss in Metal Gear Solid 3, and she is the newswoman Diane Simmons in Family Guy. See, here's the thing. In season 1, barely given anything to work with. Almost completely sidelined in most season 1 episodes, rarely leads or strategizes or shows any emotional complexity. She often is used to ask questions that just allow Reed to nonsensically explain something only to be cut off by Ben Grimm. Her powers are often underplayed, just going invisible or making a basic force field. That's pretty much everything she does. She's often reduced to reaction lines like, "Be careful, Johnny," and "Reed, can you fix this?" She's too often the damsel in distress being kidnapped by both Namor and Dr. Doom in season 1 alone. It's not till season 2 that she's given more leadership moments and dramatic beats, and Allen brings, Lori Allen, brings emotional credibility to Sue's relationships and decisions. So she's a very strong voice actor, and once she was given something better to work with in season 2, she kind of knocked it out of the park. Speaking of knocking it out of the park, The Thing, Ben Grimm, voiced by Chuck McCann. Chuck McCann voiced Duckworth on DuckTales and played Judge Fudd in Boston Legal. In season 1, The Thing was one of my least favorite characters in season 1. He leaned heavily into cartoonish delivery, campy. He was full of bad puns. He treated everything like it was a walking catchphrase opportunity. He's constantly just yelling, "It's clobbering time," like it's his favorite button on a soundboard. Corny, campy. These jokes are like lame, and he's just full of whatever punchlines. Like, "You mess with the thing, you'll get clobbered like a stale bagel." What the hell does that even mean? In fights, he often just charges and grunts with no strategy. He's just yelling and saying, "Take that. Here's a knuckle sandwich." There's a lot of just missed opportunities. Zero exploration of Ben's humanity or sadness about being trapped in that rock form. He often sounded more like a parody of the Thing than a real Ben Grimm. It's not until season 2 where Ben Grimm, the Thing, goes from being one of my least favorite characters to perhaps maybe my favorite character. It's in season 2 where Chuck McCann's performance improved because the writing improved. Performance and writing, it improved dramatically with every episode. McCann brings pathos, sadness, and loyalty to the character. The Thing becomes the heart of the team in season 2. His loyalty becomes a staple of his character, and his honor is paramount. His emotional struggles with being a monster and wanting a life with Alicia are explored more. I mean, when they say that he is the heart of the Fantastic Four, it really comes through in this second season of the show. I really saw it more in this television show than I ever saw it in the first 2 movies that came out with Ian Gruffudd and Julian McMahon, rest in peace, where who played Ben Grimm in those movies? His name is escaping me. Perhaps I could look it up real quickly. But he also had a cameo. He was from The Shield. Michael Chiklis. Bang! I didn't need to look it up. Michael Chiklis, at the time, seemed like perfect casting for Ben Grimm. And he loved Ben Grimm, the Thing, growing up. And it's unfortunate that they didn't really give that character as much as he deserved in the movies, because he's the heart of Fantastic Four. He is loyal, perhaps to a fault, and it comes through in season 2. He is beloved by his family, even Johnny Storm, who at one point even actually cries when he thinks that the Thing has perished in this animated series. So yeah, the Thing, really perhaps the best redemption arc for the character. I don't mean like the story, I mean like just redeeming the worthiness of the character from season 1 to season 2. Really just really showed how much improved the show was getting. And then the last of the Fantastic Four that I wanted to get into, the Human Torch, Johnny Storm, voiced by 2 different people. Season 1, perhaps the most famous name on this voice cast, Brian Austin Green, known as David Silver in 90210. He was cast during his real life pivot from Hollywood to rap, hip hop, and pop stardom. Because of the writing, and I'm not putting this on Brian Austin Green, I promise you, but because of the writing, his performance felt very forced. The character was written to be overly sarcastic. He was trying way too hard to sound cool. The slang that they were trying to force him to use felt, I don't know, lame. And at times he was just downright creepy when it came to women. Every line is either a groan-worthy joke, a sarcastic jab, or a painfully forced and dated slang in attempts to seem cool. It was just too much. I mean, he'd say things like, "Flame on, baby, it's party time," or "Whoa, don't touch the threads, Doc. I just had this suit dry cleaned." Like, it's a little forced. He felt like he was written like some type of dumb combination of Bart Simpson and Zach Morris. It was a little forced. There is no real emotional grounding, no vulnerability, just relentless 90s energy with no breaks. He's perhaps also responsible for the lowest moment in all of Marvel animation. More on that later. In season 2, we get Quinton Flynn voicing the Human Torch. And Quinton Flynn is a veteran voice actor known as Raiden in Metal Gear Solid, Axel in Kingdom Hearts, and Marcus Damon in Digimon Data Squad. I already said how much I love hiding and cowering away from fear. So the fact that he's Raiden from Metal Gear Solid, first introduced in Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. Raiden! Raiden! I love that. I love that game. That might be my favorite game of all time. I'm not sure. Am I crazy for saying that? He immediately brought more warmth and charm and believability to the role. But it's not just because Quentin Flynn is a phenomenal voice actor. It's because he was given much better writing to work with. All right. I'm telling you, Brian Austin Green, he's not all that bad. Season 2, Johnny becomes more grounded, romantic, emotional, less cocky. Quentin Flynn was provided with much better writing. And maybe Brian Austin Green would have done just as well in season 2, but he was replaced and we never really got the chance to see that. Now we come to see, I watched this cartoon, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago. I watched it way before this podcast was a thing. But it was actually watching this cartoon this cartoon and this specific scene that I thought more seriously about making Toonology an actual podcast. Because, you know, I'd watch Batman, I'd watch Superman, I'd watch Spider-Man, I'd watch X-Men. I was like, man, I really want to talk about these. But there already are Batman podcasts out there. And there already are X-Men podcasts and Spider-Man and Superman podcasts out there. And then I saw Fantastic Four and I was like, wow, I kind of really want to talk about this too. But I don't want to just be a Fantastic Four podcast. And I got the idea. I was like, man, why not just talk about all of them, Will? It'll probably be a lot harder and a lot more work, but screw it. And that's because I got some things to say about some stuff. I mentioned before that Fantastic Four might be responsible for the lowest moment in Marvel animation history, perhaps even Marvel history in general. This is one of the biggest head-scratching, what the helly kind of moments. I mean, you want to find something that makes no sense? Buckle up. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. Kids of all ages. I got something that makes no sense at all. This segment right here, I'm going to explore how a connection between Brian Austin Green, The Far Side, and the Black Eyed Peas led to perhaps one of the sorriest moments in not just Marvel, but maybe animated television, period. The scene, season 11, the scene is season 1, episode 11, Mole Man. Quick sidebar. It's actually episode 10 on Disney Plus, not 11. More on that soon, though. Now, in this episode, in this scene specifically, the Fantastic Four are at a fancy party at Rockefeller Center. And Johnny Storm is dancing with an uptight socialite hottie named Melinda. And she's so uptight. Right before this scene that I'm about to talk about, she tells... And Johnny's like, hey, this is pretty cool, right? Dancing in Rockefeller Center. And she's like, it's not like dancing at the Champs-Élysées in Paris, France or whatever. And Johnny's like, that's one of my favorite spots, And they're dancing to this live band, like an orchestra or whatever. And then suddenly the live music ends. And an MC, like a host, comes up to the stage and he introduces Johnny Storm and welcomes him to the stage to perform his own original song. Yeah. Johnny Storm gets on stage out of nowhere to rap. No build-up. Just a beat drops. And Johnny Storm starts rapping on a cartoon. Meant for kids. Out of nowhere. The video gets like a little slow motion. He starts off like, this is for you, Melinda. I hope you like it. Yeah. And then he immediately goes into a choreographed dance while rapping in a 90s style fashion. He's hitting splits. I mean, it's what? And the song isn't even about being the Human Torch or crime fighting or superhero stuff. No. The song is about being in high school and having a crush on a girl. Johnny Storm, hold up. Johnny Storm starts rapping out of nowhere about having a high school crush on a girl. The chorus goes, flame on, and on and on and on, flame on. And then he literally flames on, but somehow his tuxedo doesn't burn away. So he's just a Human Torch rapping in a tuxedo. Can you believe this, Galactus? Can he? I don't know if Galactus can believe this. He's over my shoulder, if you couldn't tell. 4 foot tall Galactus action figure with Silver Surfer, Frankie Ray, Terax. Got the Fantastic Four. This guy raps out of nowhere. No one in the show reacts to this like, hey, what's going on? Or like, this is weird. Nope. It's not framed as comic relief. It's, it's just part of the show out of nowhere. The tone of the episode is completely disconnected from what Johnny is doing. And as soon as the chorus ends, it's one verse and then the chorus. And as soon as that chorus ends, the entire building starts to shake. And thanks to Mole Man, it nearly collapses. And the song is immediately forgotten about and never mentioned again in the history of Marvel. Now I know what you're wondering. Why? Why did this happen? Well, before we even get into it, are we going to get flagged for this? Should I do it? Should I? Screw it. Here we go. This right here is Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, voiced by Brian Austin Green, rapping on the animated series a song called Flame On.
It's not always cool to be cool. What? You try to play you for a fool. Like you see a girl who's unique. It's a treat cause she's sweet. And she really seems to knock you off your feet. You wanna say hey, but you don't.
This is really happening.
Your mom says tell her how you feel.
There's like clips of Johnny in high school trying to hit on a girl, spliced between him dancing, wearing a tuxedo.
So she passes you by in the hallway. You're staring at the
How did this get made? I don't understand how this got made at all. I don't know.
I know the story seems long, but when I know the time is right for me and you, I just flame on.
What? Flame on, and now he's the flame, but his tuxedo doesn't burn away. I don't know. Explain that one to me. Now the building collapses, and thank God. Not a moment too soon. So, why did this happen? I mean, we never really got a clear answer. I tried to see if there was some type of interview or where Brian Austin Green or a writer or something mentioned it, but I didn't really. I haven't been able to come up with anything. If there's someone out there that has more information, please. This is as much that I could come up with. See, Brian Austin Green was actively trying to pivot into a rap career. He even released an album called One Stop Carnival in 1996. And the album was produced by a number of people, including Slim Kid Trey, who is one of the founding members of the Far Side, and a young and up-and-coming producer named Will One Time or Will 1X. You may be wondering, who is Will 1X or Will One Time? Perhaps you know him more by the name that he adopted a little bit later on. You might know him as Will I Am of the Black Eyed Peas. So my theory for why this song is in the show, I've got to wonder if, so Brian Austin Green, probably the biggest name in the voice cast, even though, after the show, you could argue that Lori Allen and Quentin Flynn probably went on to do bigger and better things, arguable. But at the time, because of 90210, Brian Austin Green was probably the biggest name on this TV show. And I've got to wonder, was there a clause in his contract? Did he say, yeah, I'll come on to the show. I'll be Johnny Storm. But see, I also have this rap album that I'm working on, that I have this career that I want to transition to. So how about I get to showcase my rap skills in an episode? And I think maybe Marvel was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then came the time to do it, and they didn't really even bother to explain or make it, thematically make sense. They just said stick it anywhere, and it was in the middle of an episode in season 1, episode 11 out of 13. So like they only had a couple episodes left to get it in. They probably didn't want to use the rap song in the season finale, and so they jammed it in out of nowhere in episode 11, 10 on Disney Plus, but I'll explain why. And that's just me coming up with the theory out of nowhere for something that happened near 30 years ago. If I ever get to see Brian Austin Green at some type of convention, you best believe that this is the first thing I'm asking him about. All right. What is the story behind Flame On in the animated series back in 1994? Yeah, that'll stay kind of ingrained in my mind for forever, I think, So that's, so be it. And I mentioned a couple of times that this happened in episode 11, but if you go on Disney Plus to rewatch this series, you'll see it's episode 10. There are 2 seasons of Fantastic Four, with each season containing 13 episodes. But on Disney Plus, it's all one season, and it's 25 episodes. But you'll see that change in theme song from episode 12 to episode 13. The reason that there are 25 episodes on Disney Plus and not 26 is because there is an episode of the animated series that originally aired that is no longer on Disney Plus and was no longer syndicated on television after a while. And the reason being is, the episode is called A Skrull Incursion. It was, I believe, episode 4 of the series, or supposed to be. I could be mistaken about that, but let me just look it up real quick. Skrull Incursion animated series. Regardless of what episode it was, there's one very specific reason that the episode was kind of taken off the air. And yeah, I was right. Fantastic Four, season 1, episode 4, Incursion of the Skrulls. It's actually a really cool episode where the Skrull Empire has this systematic plan of imitating or mimicking specific figures, and there's actually 2 different scenes with President at the time, Bill Clinton, One where Bill Clinton is giving directives to the Fantastic Four, and two where he's giving a speech to the nation. But it turns out that the first scene of Bill Clinton, oh, by the way, they don't ever mention him by name. It's just the president of the United States, but it's obvious that it's Bill Clinton. He even says that he's from Arkansas, which is where Bill Clinton is from, Little Rock, Arkansas. It's Bill Clinton, all right? Fun fact, The Thing says, even though I didn't vote for you, I still got your back, big guy. So The Thing's Republican. Go figure. I don't know if he'd still be Republican in today's day and age, but that's besides the point. Bill Clinton it was not actually Bill Clinton. It was actually a Skrull pretending to be Bill Clinton. Then Skrulls enacted a plan where they would then take over all the identities of the Fantastic Four and commit crimes as the Fantastic Four so that the nation would lose trust in them. It was a pretty fun episode. None of that is why you can't find this episode online. There's a very specific, very quick reason why you can't find this episode on Disney Plus, and that's because in the very beginning of the episode, there's a Skrull invasion of New York, and a Skrull spaceship shoots at the World Trade Center, and one of the buildings collapses. That's right. The World Trade Center collapses in Fantastic Four, the animated series, episode 4. Now, we quickly see that this didn't happen in this world, and it's actually The Thing. It's Ben Grimm playing a video game of the Fantastic Four, and in the video game, the Skrulls invade New York and knock down the World Trade Center, but still, it's there, and it's visible, and pretty obvious, I guess, why they took that one out of the rotation over there at Disney. Just had to. I didn't know that till very, very recently, and I had watched the show over 2 years ago. So, go figure. I told you guys that season 1 was rough, but season 2 is where it all really picked up, and I've mentioned already by going through each character, how they really did improve in season 2. Real quick, it was the new writers. There was also a new animation studio, and just a serious tone shift that really helped toss out the campiness and just ground the show a lot more. The theme song kind of represented that change. No longer was Giorgio Moroder's Disco Fever song the opening theme. Now we have a more realistic superhero, more grounded type of intro music to set the mood, set the tone. The Thing, he's not this joke machine. He's this loyal heart of the group kind of character. Johnny Storm, he's completely rewritten and recast. He's no longer this creepy guy. He actually has his heart broken in season 2 twice, actually. And Reed and Sue actually become better partners. Sue becomes a better leader, but becomes a leader in general. She wasn't really allowed to lead the team at all before, but she takes more of a leadership role in season 2. She's much more important in season 2. And Reed's writing wasn't as lazy and as like scientific techno blah blah. It was more nuanced, more his intelligence was displayed more as outwitting his enemies, more so than just trying to invent some crazy gadget or something. His intelligence was used more to like use science to beat his rivals in season 1, whereas he was more outwitting his rivals in season 2, and it was a nice way to improve on the character. And here's the thing, regardless of season, whether it was the campy season 1 or the awesome grounded season 2, there were a lot of guest stars with epic arcs throughout the entire series. You had this guy, my main man over here, Galactus, who becomes a terrifying godlike threat throughout the show. His herald, Silver Surfer, he has a tragic and nuanced and morally complex arc. You have awesome characters like Black Panther and Namor and Daredevil and Hulk and Thor and the Inhumans, and even one of the most random cameos ever by Ghost Rider. And I have to mention like by himself, Doctor Doom. This might be the show's secret weapon. It might be the best portrayal and acted performance. It might be the best portrayal and the best performance in the entire show. That's Doctor Doom. It's kind of like the definitive portrayal of him, in my opinion, because there has been no movie that has nailed him yet. The voice acting is excellent. It's menacing, articulate, grandiose. He appears across multiple episodes. He's in multiple arcs. They can't get rid of him. He's a mix of science, sorcery, and political manipulation. He finally feels like the Fantastic Four's main antagonist and not just a villain of the week, you know? He is just incredible. And season 2 didn't just save the show, it elevated it. The Fantastic Four stopped being an afterthought and became a real piece of Marvel animation history. Unfortunately, though, there was no season 3. Why? Can't really tell you. There's a bunch of maybe theories, you know, low ratings, lack of buzz. Maybe the damage was already done by season 1. Marvel did have an entire financial collapse. You know, Marvel Comics was in serious financial trouble by 1996 and 97. The company filed for bankruptcy in 96. That could have had something to do with it. The massive layoffs, the restructuring, the halts to the non-essential productions. You know, maybe that's what happened. There's also a shift towards other projects in Marvel. You know, they're Avengers United They Stand and Spider-Man Unlimited were, you know, twinkles in their eyes at this point. And yeah, the Fantastic Four just, they felt like it ran its course, and you know, they just never got their due. The Marvel Action Hour format ended, so there wasn't that syndicated program of an hour-long Marvel show with Iron Man and Fantastic Four. You know, it just, I think all these things just together really just put the kaputs on Fantastic Four. And it's a shame because by the end of season 2, it had, to say it found its footing is an understatement. It was hitting on all cylinders. And had there been a season 3, I think that they would have been able to do some pretty fantastic stories, if you ask me. Was that lame? Sorry. So, season 1 and season 2 came and went. And I'm kind of wishing we had a season 3. But so is life. And we don't get it. And here we are towards the end of my show where I like to do my top 5s. So why don't we get right into my top 5s? Let's do my top 5 villains of Fantastic Four, the animated series. At number 5, we've got Psycho Man, voiced by Timothy Dalton. One of the more out there villains. He's like this tiny alien that uses fear, doubt, and hate to attack the Fantastic Four. I actually have an action figure of Psycho Man right here. If you want to check that out. Yeah. He appears in season 2, episode 3, in his very own episode titled Psycho Man. Timothy Dalton voices him with intensity. He kind of feels like a Bond villain in outer space. And if you didn't get that reference, Timothy Dalton, famous for playing James Bond. His emotion, he has this emotion control device, which you can actually see right here. That I'm showing my viewers on like YouTube, and you know, I guess if you can see me on if I show this on TikTok or something. There we go. Fear, doubt, hate. That's Psycho Man's emotion controlling machine. He uses his powers to manipulate the team's emotions and turn on them, have them turn on each other. He uses his powers to manipulate the team's emotions and to turn them against each other. Nailed it. He forces the Fantastic Four to battle their own insecurities. Classic power of the mind kind of stuff. He's like a solid weird science kind of villain, straight out of the Kirby playbook. Great visual design, oversized armor, looming presence despite his small stature. Nice little sci-fi touch here for the Fantastic Four. Only in that one episode, so I've got him here at number 5. Number 4, I've got the Puppet Master. voiced by John Vernon. The Puppet Master is creepy, obsessive, and has a personal connection to Alicia Masters as her stepfather. Alicia Masters is the blind love interest of Ben Grimm that is essentially the Thing's moral compass throughout the entire series. The Puppet Master what he does is he creates puppets out of clay, and then somehow he's able to then manipulate whoever he made whoever he modeled after clay. After that, his manipulation-based powers bring psychological tension to the show. These clay dolls and mind control, they're classic pulp villain weirdness, and I was all there for it. I loved it. John Vernon gives him a cold, sinister voice that fits the role. His obsession with controlling Alicia adds disturbing undertones, and unlike many villains, he doesn't want world domination. He just enjoys the power over the people. Next, number 3 on my list of best villains for Fantastic Four, the animated series. I've got Super Skrull, voiced by Neil Ross. He's a classic Fantastic Four villain. He has all their powers of the first family combined into one body. He's arrogant, theatrical, and aggressive. He's a great contrast to the team. He feels like a natural rival to the Fantastic Four, especially Thing and Johnny. It's a great way. See, the Skrull Empire in general is a pretty terrifying idea and presence in the Fantastic Four and all of Marvel. And Super Skrull is basically this amalgamation of all the powers of the Fantastic Four into one super scary Super Skrull. And he appears in the Kree Skrull arc here in the series. And for that, I've got him at number 3, giving up a really good fight to the Fantastic Four. At number 2, I've got Galactus. Galactus is a threat unlike any other threat in all of Marvel. He lives just to feed, and he has to feed on worlds, entire planets. He's voice acted by Tony Jay, who gives him a deep, ominous, and perfect godlike tone. Every time that he arrives in an episode, it feels like, oh man, it's about to go down. It's pretty epic. He's weirdly logical. Even though he has no soul or emotion, his logic will lead him to often work with Reed Richards in finding a solution. And in fact, in the very last appearance of Galactus in the TV show, he actually goes as far as calling the Fantastic Four his friends. More on that later. I can't wait to see Galactus represented in film correctly for the first time ever. Because if you guys don't know, way back when Fantastic Four 2, Rise of the Silver Surfer came out, they had Galactus as the ultimate bad guy there, and Galactus was basically a big cloud. Yeah, that happened. And my number 1 villain in Fantastic Four, the animated series, was there ever any doubt? Dr. Doom, voiced by Simon Templeman. He's the most recurring and consistently strong villain across both seasons. Simon Templeman's performance is elite, regal, intimidating, and perfectly arrogant. He elevated the material every time he appeared. Doom wasn't just evil, he was strategic, manipulative, and weirdly principled. It worked across different plot types. He had magic stories, tech stories, political stories, even a cosmic arc. He stood toe-to-toe with Galactus and still felt like the bigger threat in some ways. One of the rare characters who felt like he belonged in a better show than what we were getting. He got so popular, he was brought back for Spider-Man, the animated series, in their final story arc as well. This version of Doom might be one of the best animated interpretations ever. The show didn't always know how to write Reed well, but it nailed Victor Von Doom. Let's keep it moving. See, if you have your villains, Then you've also got your allies and Fantastic Four, the first family of Marvel. Boy, did they have allies. And before I get into the top 5, there were so many that I had to add some honorable mentions. So, honorable mentions in Fantastic Four, the animated series, when it comes to their allies, let's talk about Thor, the God of Thunder, voiced by John Rhys Davies. Yeah, that's right. Gimli from Lord of the Ring was Thor in Fantastic Four. He appears in a couple of episodes, including When Calls Galactus and Battling a Planet, I believe is the other one called. Or When, is it, When, To Battle a Living Planet. That's the episode that Thor first appears in. There we go. But anyways, Thor as a ally here, voiced pretty godly by John Rhys Davies. That was pretty cool, pretty fun to see. He's a huge help. He's treated with a lot of respect here in the show. He's really treated like a god, where like he's one of the most powerful people in the entire universe. So it makes sense that the 2 times that he comes onto the show, he's helping the Fantastic Four battle an entire planet and then battle Galactus. More on both of those in just a bit. Another honorable mention, Daredevil, voice acted by Edward Albert, who also was the voice actor of Silver Surfer. More on him in just a bit. He helps the Fantastic Four in an episode called And a Blind Man Shall Lead Them. It's the very first episode of season 2, which is awesome because, like I said, season 2 is where the TV show really kicks it into gear. So the fact that Daredevil is the first ally in season 2 really helps set the tone and really makes it really lets you know this season is going to be way different than season 1. It's an episode where he helps the Fantastic Four fight a bunch of Doom bots that Doom is controlling. Awesome stuff. He's a strong moral center and smart action choreography along with it goes to make this one of the better allies. And then I'm going to throw in Frankie Ray. Frankie Ray, otherwise known as Nova eventually. She appears in towards the end in a great episode that we're going to talk about. And although she was only in that one episode, she actually does she helps the Fantastic Four a lot because she kind of takes Galactus away from Earth and takes her to other planets. And I'll touch on that in just a little bit. But now that we've done some honorable mentions, I'm going to talk about the top 5 allies. And at number 5 of the top 5 allies of the Fantastic Four in the animated series, I've got the Black Panther. He's voice acted by Keith David, and he is in the episode Prey of the Black Panther, Season 2, Episode 6. Keith David absolutely owns this role. He is authoritative, intelligent, and commanding. He recently got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and man, if you ask me, he should have gotten it just for this single portrayal of Black Panther, but he also is awesome as the President and Rick and Morty and a million other things. That's just the one that really comes at the top of my head. Panther shows up not to help, but to test the Fantastic Four. He wants to see if they're strong enough to help him out. The episode showcases Wakanda's tech and the sacred Panther legacy, as well as showcasing vibranium. It explores themes of isolationism versus global responsibility, and it's impressive for a single episode. Black Panther here, he's such a cool ally because he really shows how powerful he is, not just because of his tech, because of his suit, but because of his principles as a leader of Wakanda. So yeah, I got Black Panther here at number 5, and he just looks so friggin' cool. Number 4 on my list of best allies of the Fantastic Four in the animated series, I've got Bruce Banner / the Hulk. Get this. Bruce Banner is voice acted by Mark Hamill. Am I going to talk about Mark Hamill in every episode? And then the Hulk is voiced by Ron Perlman. Mark Hamill, Joker, Ron Perlman, Clayface. Put them together, you get the Hulk. It's a unique 2-for-1 guest spot here at number 4 because I've got 2 elite voice actors. Banner's conflict feels intimate when Mark Hamill plays him as a quietly tormented scientist, but Ron Perlman goes full rage monster with Hulk's voice while he grunts, yells, and snarls while he battles it out with the Thing and Doom. I mean, I'm going to talk about the episode in a little bit, but I love the dichotomy of the Thing and Hulk having this intense rivalry that's really just about who can beat up the other. There's no intellect behind that rivalry. It's just pure brawn over mind. I don't know why I just screwed up there. But then you have Bruce Banner and Reed Richards being like great allies, and they work together. They're two of the smartest people in the entire Marvel universe. Of course they work together, and it's actually makes for a great story too. But Bruce Banner, the Hulk, they make for awesome allies for the Fantastic Four here. Number 3 on my list of best allies of the Fantastic Four, we've got the Inhumans, the entire bunch of them. Black Bolt, Medusa, Crystal, Lockjaw. I'm forgetting a couple of other people. I know Maximus is actually he's technically an Inhuman, but he's more the bad guy in this. But Karnak, that's the other guy I was thinking of. Couldn't think of Karnak. Anyways, Gorgon is in this. There's all the Inhumans. It's a 3-episode arc. It's actually pretty awesome, and they return later on for another story arc. Johnny Storm falls in love with Crystal. They fall in love with each other. Actually, it's kind of sad at the end when they can't be together. It's one of the moments that really gives Johnny Storm some more grounding as a character and some more depth, and it makes him seem a lot less, chauvinistic, if you will. Black Bolt is really treated with a lot of reverence here. And if I didn't really know much about Black Bolt until I saw Multiverse of Madness. And then I was like, whoa, Black Bolt looks like he's powerful as heck. I didn't watch the Inhumans TV show, but the Inhumans here really look pretty awesome. And Black Bolt, literally, there's no voice actor because he doesn't speak. And I thought that was actually pretty cool. Medusa definitely looks like a badass in this. Like she's like can run stuff. Crystal, good love interest. I really loved Lockjaw more than anything else. So the Inhumans right here, number 3 best ally of the Fantastic Four. At number 2 on my list of best allies for the Fantastic Four, Namor the Submariner, voiced by James Warwick. Man, he comes in cocky, regal, and shirtless. Namor shows up swinging for Sue Storm and ready to fight Reed. Immediately, he falls for Sue and kidnaps her and tries to make her fall in love with him. But Sue's actually able to get through to Namor, and Namor ends the episode as a reluctant ally and then comes back later on in the season as a full-blown ally for the Fantastic Four. Very comic book accurate. In fact, a lot of the stories of the animated series were indeed comic book accurate, which I actually kind of dig. In a world where everyone's crying about comic book accuracy, here we have a TV show that was very comic book accurate but doesn't really get remembered in the long run. So what does comic book accuracy really matter if you're not going to talk or remember about it? This show, very comic book accurate. I think that's cool. And Namor the Submariner was treated with a lot of reverence here. He was very powerful, but was given the chance to still be one of the good guys at the end, and I like that. I've become a big fan of Namor the Submariner ever since Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And I like seeing him in a TV show like this where he's treated with respect. And that brings me to the number 1 ally of the Fantastic Four. Was there any doubt? It's this guy. It's the Silver Surfer, voiced by Edward Albert. He is in a bunch of episodes throughout the season. He is a complicated and nuanced character. He is the heart and soul of every Galactus storyline, and he gives the whole thing emotional weight. He's introduced first as Galactus' herald, but ultimately betrays Galactus to save Earth. One of the few characters who feels truly tragic and noble. Edward Albert brings this soft, mournful gravitas to the voice that I absolutely love. The show gives Surfer more emotional range than most guest characters get, and he also gets some of the best animation treatment. Celestial skies, cosmic visuals. It's just some beautiful stuff when he comes on screen. It's a little bit of a precursor for what comes later on, because Silver Surfer, the animated series, which unfortunately only lasted one season, probably gained a lot of its inspiration from some scenes in this TV show, because the Silver Surfer animated series might be the most visually impressive of all the Marvel animated series that have ever come out. Silver Surfer and Galactus together, they make the Fantastic Four feel like a big part of an even bigger universe. So he helps not just the Fantastic Four feel more important, but he also has their back against the biggest of threats, Galactus and Doctor Doom. That's why I've got him as my number one ally for the Fantastic Four. And that brings us to the final top 5 list that I've got for you guys. It's the top 5 episodes and story arcs. So if you don't know, I always include, if it's a 2-part or 3-part episode, that counts as one story for me. That's why I call this not specifically my 5 best episodes, but it's my 5 best stories, essentially. And before I get to the top 5, I've got some honorable mentions here. I mentioned them before, so I'm not going to delve on them too much. But you have To Battle the Living Planet, Season 2, Episode 5. In that episode, we have Ego the Living Planet appearing in a final, not in a fight. Ego the Living Planet appears, and Fantastic Four have to battle a sentient, angry planet in space. Thor comes to their aid, and it's Thor and the Fantastic Four taking on Ego the Living Planet. It's pretty cool, especially when you think of how Ego is the villain in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Or Volume 2, and played by Kurt Russell. And had I seen this episode before I ever saw that movie, I would have probably enjoyed that movie even more than I did at the time, because Ego the Living Planet is really, even though he's only got one episode here, he actually is a big danger to the entire world. And if the Fantastic Four didn't have Thor by their side, who knows what would have happened in that episode. Another episode in my honorable mentions, I mentioned it before, A Blind Man Shall Lead Them. It's where Daredevil joins the Fantastic Four to help them battle against Doctor Doom and the Doombots. It was the very first episode of Season 2, and it set the tone for what was undoubtedly the better of 2 seasons, and that's why I have it here. Now let's get into my number 5 best episode of Fantastic Four, the animated series. It's the last one. Season 2, Episode 13, Doomsday. This one, essentially, Doctor Doom steals the power cosmic from the Silver Surfer, and he's able to control the surfboard and the powers all at once, and he uses them to take out the Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four realize that once, with Doctor Doom being able to control the Silver Surfer's powers, he's basically unstoppable. And it isn't until Reed Richards uses Doctor Doom's own vanity and anger against him that he's able to not outpower Doctor Doom, but outsmart him by making Doctor Doom chase this machine that was angering him out into outer space. But little did Doctor Doom know that Galactus had placed a force field around Earth that kept Silver Surfer and his board trapped within it. It was his punishment for choosing to save Earth versus serve Galactus. So when Doom tries to chase this thing out of outer space, he loses the board and is separated from the Silver Surfer's powers and Power Cosmic. And the Fantastic Four, together with Silver Surfer, take out Doctor Doom one last time in the finale of this series. And that's why I've got it here at number 5. Number 4 in my best story arcs and episodes of Fantastic Four, I've got the Inhuman Saga. It was a 3-part episode or 3-part series. This is where you get Black Bolt, you get Medusa, you get Crystal, you get Lockjaw, you get Karnak, Gorgon, you get all of these people along with the storyline of Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, falling in love with Crystal. It's a very Romeo and Juliet kind of romance. Maximus is the bad guy. The Inhumans have to work with the Fantastic Four to take out their own member of the family, Maximus. It takes them 3 episodes to do it, and the Inhumans come back later on in the series to help the Fantastic Four once again. Mostly because I think that Black Bolt is awesome, Lockjaw is cool, and that Johnny Storm's relationship with Crystal is perhaps the most important thing to make that character legitimate in this series. I've got to put the Inhuman Saga at number 4. And at number 3 in my best episodes of Fantastic Four, the animated series, I've got Nightmare in Green, Season 2, Episode 6, featuring the Hulk and Bruce Banner. The Hulk voiced by Ron Perlman, but Bruce Banner voiced by Mark Hamill. How do you beat that? In this episode, you have The Thing versus the Hulk. That's right. The Thing versus the Hulk. They have this pretty epic fight right at the beginning of the episode, where essentially the Hulk pounds the Thing into the ground. They fight again later on in the episode, and the Hulk nearly beats the Thing to death. It's all because Doctor Doom has tricked the Hulk into believing that the Fantastic Four are actually his enemies, when in reality they're his friends, as is evident by Bruce Banner working with Reed Richards. It's funny. Ben Grimm is actually upset with Reed because he thinks that Reed and Bruce Banner are busy working on a way for Johnny Storm and Crystal to reunite. But we learn later on at the end of the episode that Reed Richards and Bruce Banner were actually working on a cure for Ben Grimm. A reminder that Reed Richards will always be Ben Grimm's best friend and vice versa. At the end of the episode, or towards the end, the Hulk, he's convinced by Alicia and Sue Storm that they are his friends and that it was Doctor Doom that led him astray. But it might be too late because he beat the ever-loving hell out of the Thing to the point where Alicia and Reed Richards weren't able to hear a heartbeat, and they believed that the Thing had passed away. They all cried at his loss, including Johnny Storm, who was always, he had this love-hate relationship with the Thing. But in this scene, you see that, no, it's not love-hate. It's complete love for the Thing. There's a crowd of people that have gathered to see this go down. And even people in the crowd start crying over the death of Ben Grimm. But it's just pretend because Ben's fine. The Thing's alive. And the only reason they couldn't hear his heartbeat is because he's a rock. Go figure. Either way, it still made for a very emotional ending to that episode. And it was the episode, in my opinion, that solidified that the Thing is no longer this campy joke machine that he was in season 1. No, he's a loyal, honorable hero for people. And he is the heart of the Fantastic Four. And this episode showed us. My number 2 episode of the Fantastic Four, Prey of the Black Panther, Season 2, Episode 6. I struggled with this episode. I struggled putting it this high. See, because part of me wanted to make it number 1, and part of me didn't want to put it on the list at all. Because yeah, technically, this is an incredible episode of Fantastic Four, the animated series. But truthfully, this feels like an episode of a Black Panther animated series that we never got. Sidebar, there was actually once a 6-episode miniseries, animated miniseries of Black Panther produced by BET. And guess what? You better believe I'm covering that on a future episode of Toonology. But before that, here we have an amazing episode that gives us the origin of Black Panther. It gives us the origin of Ulysses S. Klaus or Claw. And it gives us the entire story of Wakanda. It introduces and explains vibranium. This feels like a Black Panther episode. The Fantastic Four are just kind of there. But here's the thing. In my wrestling with whether or not I should put this on my top 5 list at all, and should I even put it this high, I learned that Black Panther's debut in Marvel Comics was actually in an issue of the Fantastic Four. So this is actually very true. It's very true to the comics. To have an entire episode basically focused on Black Panther was actually honoring the Fantastic Four comic books and the stories of the past. So for that reason, and for how awesome the story and the setting up of Wakanda and Black Panther and Klaus, I screwed that up so many times. Anyways, for all those reasons, I've got Prey of the Black Panther as my number 2 episode of the Fantastic Four. And honestly, this could have been a pilot for a Black Panther animated series, and I think that they missed an opportunity on that one big time. And finally, my number 1 episode of Fantastic Four, the animated series, When Galactus Calls, Season 2, Episode 8. And let me tell you, I came very close to not putting this on my top 5 and are not even making it an honorable mention. Because when I first watched this, I thought that the ending was way too random and Deus Ex Machina to consider this a good episode. But then I rewatched it way later, like a year or 2 later. And I don't know, I just was able to digest the episode in such a different way. It felt like an episode that probably should have been a 2 or 3 part episode, but it wasn't. It was a 1 part episode. And the benefit of that is that it was an absolutely non-stop entertaining episode. The problem is that parts felt rushed, and it had one of the wildest endings ever with little sense, little explanation. And it took me a while to come to this conclusion, but damn it, that was kind of awesome too. And I'm just choosing to focus on the awesomeness and the fun that this episode was, as opposed to, oh, well, darn it, it was 2 Deus Ex Machina. Yeah, it was, but I don't care. When Galactus Calls, the story here, it's the introduction, essentially, it's Frankie Ray becoming Nova. It's the introduction of Terrax, the newest Herald of Galactus. And it's what happens in this episode is Johnny Storm is sad that his relationship with Crystal had to come to an end. And he meets Frankie Ray at dinner while he's signing autographs. And for some reason that Reed explains through some science mumbo jumbo, meeting Johnny Storm kickstarts this like cosmic gene that Frankie Ray had inside of her and just has her burst into flames just like the Human Torch. After this, Terrax, the newest Herald of Galactus, comes to Earth to essentially take over Earth. And we learn that Terrax is such a bad guy that he doesn't want to just take over Earth. He wants the throne for himself. So he's actually taking on Galactus as well. He found a toxic, poisonous planet and basically gave it to Galactus as a meal. And now Galactus is weak and poisoned. And Terrax uses the Fantastic Four to fight Galactus because he knows that the first family of Marvel are the only people in the entire universe to have defeated Galactus. So he uses them again to try to become the galactical emperor himself. Instead, the Fantastic Four actually reason with Galactus, and Galactus takes care of Terrax himself and gets rid of him on his own. The problem is that Galactus is poisoned still and realizes that the poison is taking effect way faster than he thought, and he has to feast now or he's going to perish. And that means that he has to eat Earth. And obviously the Fantastic Four aren't going to let this happen, so a big battle ensues, and Galactus is winning this fight, but suddenly Thor comes in out of nowhere with the hammer of God and bang, smacks the ever-living crap out of Galactus, and he falls flat on his back. However, this is not that random cameo that I was talking about. This isn't that Deus Ex Machina I was talking about, because Galactus rises. He's not done. He's okay. He's alive. He's all good. And the Fantastic Four and Thor, they all realize, oh man, there ain't a damn thing that we can do about Galactus right now. This guy right here, there ain't a damn thing we can do about that man right there. And that's when, out of nowhere, see, at least Thor was in an entire episode before this. Out of nowhere, for the first time ever, Ghost Rider, Johnny Blaze, the Ghost Rider himself, appears in Fantastic Four, riding on his motorcycle, skull on fire, leather jacket and chains, looking like a total badass, man. He looks so freaking cool. And he's there, voiced by Richard Grieco. Richard Grieco. That's the voice of Ghost Rider. And it's so dark and so cool that I just loved it even more, man. I loved it. The first time I saw this, I was like, where the hell did Ghost Rider come from? He comes with 5 minutes left in the episode. He's there for 2 minutes and he's gone. He comes in. He basically comes riding in on his motorcycle and he says, you know what, Galactus? You've caused the death of billions and billions of people throughout this universe, but you ain't going to do it here. It's time that you know all of the guilt and the anguish and the sorrow that you have caused. And he uses what's Ghost Rider's most famous and intense and strong attack, the penance stare, where he makes Galactus feel the sorrow and the anguish of all of his victims. And there isn't a single person or entity in all of Marvel that has more victims than Galactus, because he's the world eater. He eats worlds. And Ghost Rider, with one move, one little attack, one special, makes Galactus feel all of this sorrow and all of the anguish of billions and billions and billions of people in one moment, and it takes him out of commission. He is TKO. He is done. He starts shrinking in stature. He's actually dying. And Frankie Ray sees this and actually feels bad for him, and says that she will take Galactus away from Earth and find other planets for him to devour. And she becomes the new Herald of Galactus, leaving Johnny Storm alone once again. That's a lot of stuff that happened in one 22-minute episode. And not all of it really made all that much sense. But it was so much fun that I had to put it at number one. Had to. And that's it, man. That's all I got to say about the Fantastic Four. Personally, I can't wait to go see this thing in theaters. See, here's the thing. Fantastic Four, the animated series, may not have started strong. That by the end, it was absolutely finding its groove. Season 1 had its bumps. The tone was campy, the humor was broad, and at times it felt like the show didn't quite know what audience it was aiming for. The Human Torch breaking into a full-on rap performance mid-episode kind of says it all. But even in that early stretch, you could see flashes of potential. Ambitious storylines, classic villains, and a real effort to pull from the comics. And then came season 2, and everything leveled up. The animation improved, the storytelling got sharper, the tone matured without losing the energy that made it fun. Characters were given actual depth. Reed and Sue felt like leaders. Ben had real emotional weight and heart. Johnny was no longer just comic relief or shallow. The show also started swinging big. Multi-episode arcs, thoughtful adaptations, complex villains, real consequences. We got cosmic epics, political intrigue, moral dilemmas, and quiet, character-driven moments all in the span of a few episodes. It stopped feeling like a Saturday morning cartoon and started feeling like a real love letter to the Fantastic Four. And just as it hit that stride, just as it started sticking the landing, it was over. That's what makes this show so interesting. It didn't stay stuck in its rough beginning. It grew. It got better. It evolved into something that's genuinely worth revisiting. Not because it's perfect, but because it figured itself out. And in doing so, it quietly became one of the most underrated entries in Marvel's animated history. So if you've written it off, or never even gave it a shot to begin with, now's the time. Skip the noise, get to the heart, and watch what happens when a show finds its voice. And unfortunately, ends too soon. Guys, that's all I've got for you this episode. I thank you once again. As always, I'm your host. I'm Will Bryant, and this has been yet another episode of Toonology, the show that's all about animation, and we break down the study of cartoons. Please do me a favor, follow me on all platforms at Toonology HQ, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And be sure to show even more love to Fantastic Four in theaters this weekend. Marvel, please set the ship right. We're counting on you, Pedro Pascal. Till then, peace.